Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Anasa. So happy to be with you this morning. So let's take our attention inside and see what comes through. So we're going to tell you that what experience we are hoping to share with you is the experience of yourself as a light being. Every human being is capable of experiencing themselves as a light being. And it has very much to do with free will choice. We're going to tell you a conversation that Rebecca and Andrew had this morning. We have permission to do this. Rebecca woke up having had a nightmare about her health. And this was 2 nights in a row that she had woken up having had a nightmare about something. Doesn't really matter what, but these are nightmares about bad outcomes. And he pointed out, he said, you know, everything can have a bad outcome. And so when we choose to focus on the potential bad outcome, whatever we focus on grows. Wherever we put our attention, that is what we are serving. So it's very important that we redirect the parts of ourselves that tend to choose lower. And it's a certain kind of, in the beginning, it's lack of awareness of possibility. And then at a certain point, it changes to laziness, where, you know, we'll say, I'm going to take care of this later. And so we have to be vigilant. This is the place of vigilance. When you notice something 2 days in a row, that means you're not quite vigilant enough. So we choose the highest possible outcome for every circumstance, and we practice with our imagination, practicing the highest good for the whole. And it begins with ourselves. So having said that, bring in white light through the top of your head. Allow yourself to be cleansed by this white light throughout all the dimensions of your being. And by dimensions, we're not talking about something unknown. We're talking about physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And of course, these are all one thing. And so we invite every wrinkle to be healed with white light. And we ask to be informed about that which we are not bringing to the light. This is our shadow self. So we visualize that white light going to every cell in our body, informing it about health throughout the dimensions of being. So immediately we understand that that part of us, which is temporary, can be influenced, but not made to last forever. And we focus on the part which is not temporary. This is where the highest best resides. And now we imagine that white light has a flow to it, that it's actually moving. And it's taking with it, everything not needed by the highest best. Everything that's finished can go. And we invite into ourselves the experience of union and peace. The time is now. Not next week or when we think we finally might have time to do our spiritual practice, but now. Feel into peace inside yourself. Allow the white light to clear everything. We are demanding of ourselves to live in peace. Holding to that peace inside yourself throughout your body. Gently open your eyes and allow yourself to be in both places at the same time. We see the beautiful, radiant white light in all of you. It is so beautiful. Hold to the feeling of peace. How may we serve today? We didn't finish our morning water yet, so we have it. How are you all? So we love the fall. You know, it always feels like the time of new beginnings, probably from school. And the heat starts to go away and the rain starts to come and everything's growing and full. And it feels like a fullness of opportunity internally as well. You know, there are always things right in the sky and things wrong in the sky. At the moment, there's a lot of difficulty. A number of planets going backwards, which means that they just behave differently, sometimes unexpectedly. They get independent when they're going backwards. And they don't actually go backwards, they just appear that way in the sky. From the Earth, they appear to be going backwards. So it makes for a fair amount of confusion, which is part of why we started today in the way we did. Because we can take that confusion as a problem. And instead, if we just wash it away before it settles in, like a bad dream, we can actually bring ourselves to a 0 point again of peace. Understanding that in that way, we choose our reality. We choose where to put our attention. And if we don't choose it, then we identify ourselves as a victim. That choice is very close together. And once you make the choice to be a victim, there's only one direction that goes, and it's not up. So anything that makes us feel less than, it's important to release. Now, it's true that there is nothing that any of us are going to be the best at in the entire multiverse. And so we can always find excuses to feel less than. It's not about the outer world. It's about what we choose inside ourselves. Where we put our attention. We can even think of it as making the best of a bad situation, although that's the worst way to think of it. But it's not untrue. We are making a choice to concentrate on that which elevates us and everyone around us. Peace. A balance point. A center. A center in the middle of our chest and just below our belly button. These two places are critical. This does not mean that we deny our emotions. A healthy person experiences every emotion there is within a few days. Because we're moving with the reality that's unfolding in front of us and responding to it in real time. When we are stuck in any feeling, that is the beginning of this description of dis-ease. So we bring ourselves to peace. We find our center by letting go of everything that's not that center. How may we serve? Yes.
I think you've answered this already, but maybe to clarify more. In a period like now where there's difficult planetary alignments and basically the whole atmosphere, everything seems to be infused with this tension and confusion on a personal and global level. It seems to me just going to a peace does seem like it has to be somehow inclusive of this, is because it's the, it's the air we breathe and the water we drink. And the question is how to really be with it when, in some sense, it's just the flavor of what is, but it's not.
So the question is, we'll paraphrase a bit. Everything feels chaotic and a lot of it negative. And is it not denial to look for peace in that? Is that so?
How does one do it? How does one include that?
Right. How does one include all the confusion and chaos and negativity around us into peace? And the truth is total acceptance. There is no denial possible in the flow of peace. Otherwise, we're doing this. And that's the opposite of who we want to be. We don't want to be resisting the reality. And the reality could be the demise of the planet happening much faster than we thought. I mean, that could be the reality. We can allow ourselves to go there. It's no different from acknowledging the fact that each one of us is going to die. And these things are out of our hands. So understanding that it's not our choice. We don't have a choice about when we're going to die or how we're going to die or anything between now and then, really, in the big picture. The only choice we have is how we are inside ourselves between now and then. And we all know from experience that the best place to be is peace. We all know it. We're not giving you new information. What we may be giving you that's new information is how to get there. And the truth is this, the peace is already there. We are overlaying it with our reactivity. It's not that the peace goes away. It's that we get distracted into the superficial reaction of, oh my God, look at what my mind can conjure up about what might happen. My teacher called that the mantra of stupidity. What's going to happen to me? So we don't forget that. We just allow it not to be where we focus our attention. And we allow it all. Peace doesn't come from clamping down on feelings. So really, there is this place that we get to where we recognize the contradiction between the chaos and the peace. We recognize it. We allow it all to be there at the same time. And in that allowing, the peace gets stronger. It doesn't mean that the chaos exactly goes away, but we allow ourselves to be in the contradiction and in peace at the same moment. Because both things are true. In three-dimensional thinking, there is no room for contradiction. Logic always comes to its conclusion, which is we think irrefutable. But the second we jump outside of linear thinking, then it becomes possible to sit in the contradiction because we recognize the truth of it. Does this make sense? So it's not either or. How could it possibly be? Because both are always here. They're both here in contrast, sometimes more and sometimes less. And for each of us, that varies. but it's the total allowing of whatever is real that brings us to peace. Does that answer the question? And we can feel the truth of that. There, there's not either chaos or peace. There is both in the same moment, in the same place, in our beingness, and in that total acceptance, we can understand that part of the beauty of life is not knowing what's going to happen next. And to try to take that out of the equation, which is really what we're trying to do, is to make ourselves comfortable with knowledge. We take a lot of the reason we get up in the morning out of the equation by trying to pretend that there's something reliable about our life, something finite that we can grab onto. And it's the very finite that will disappear. And we move between excitement and dread about that. All of us do. And that's just the reality. And in that acknowledgement of the chaos and confusion, we can allow this moment to be calm and clear, because we are not fighting. And we allow the white light to permeate everything. See, it's not a trick, it's a choice. And that's where the choice is. The choice is not between life and death. The choice is not between chaos and stability. The choice is where we are putting our attention. And it's a very interesting exercise to feel into the contradiction of two opposites, the contrast of two opposites being true in the same moment, and allowing that inside yourself. And there is a certain tension in that contrast. And relaxing in the face of that tension, allowing it to be. Educates us about how to find that balance point. And interestingly, that is the same point as the place between the inhale and the exhale. They have the same meaning. And it's an access point to that which is beyond. in allowing ourselves to sit in contrast and feeling into the space between the breaths. We enter into that which is real. Did that answer your question? How does it feel? So he said it feels much more balanced. How may we serve? So there are two ways to go with this. You can concentrate on identifying the contrast and holding it as you feel into the space between the breaths, or you can just go to the space between the breaths and understand that as the contrast. We inhale life and we exhale life until the final exhale. You know, this was a big confusion for Rebecca when she started learning anatomy at the same time she was learning cranial osteopathy. Because she would look at these anatomy books and the diaphragm was always an umbrella shape like this in the middle of the body. And when she had her hands on people, the diaphragm was always like a moving thing going like this in the middle. And so it felt much more like it was flat or even descending. Until one day she was staring at those pictures and she realized that they were dead people. That was what the final exhale looks like in the body. So I don't know about you, but the assumption was that you were looking at a live body, but of course not. Cadavers are not alive. And that's what anatomy textbooks are modeled on. Anyway, that's just an aside. It's not really important, but in a way it is, because we are participating in that inhale and the exhale, and that is the junction point of our access to life itself. And when that life is gone, it's gone. There's just dead. But we know from all the science we've studied ever that energy is never created or destroyed. It just changes form. We're going to take the just out because it's so magical. It changes form. So we change form. Ice to water, water to steam. We can investigate the formless by concentrating on the space between the breaths and the truth in the contradictions, the truth in the center of the contradictions. And we have these contradictions that we live with in each of us in more than one arena. We have them all over the place. And it's learning to live in the contradiction with complete acceptance that keeps it from becoming dis-ease. There is a health in that acceptance that keeps it from getting fixed into a point that gathers negativity and becomes illness. And it is that capacity to release to release the resistance to the contradiction, to understand that the in-breath and the out-breath are not contradictions. They're part of the same flow. We all have things that we live with that we don't agree with. We all have them. They're easy to come up with. We focus a lot of attention on them. These are the very contradictions we're talking about. You allow these to rise up in you. And they're usually the things that we're most exercised about inside ourselves. This is wrong. So feel into that wrong. And feel into what, what's causing this reaction in you. And see if it's possible to find a place where you can just let that be. And you can feel the whole thing just soften inside yourself. Like, oh, this is just how it is. And in this moment, maybe there are 10 things you can think of to do about it. But in this moment, just let it go. Let it fill with white light. And you see next to that white light, that contrast is nothing but a thought form. And the more white light you bring into it, the more it begins to relax. And in that very moment, in that peace, you understand that all contradictions can be held rather than limitations. They can be allowed rather than destroying our peace. And then peace does become a choice. We feel into that density in ourselves. We breathe into it. We allow it to be. And suddenly, miraculously, it disappears as a limitation. And from that perspective, all kinds of possibilities begin to arise. And that's when we get quieter. Instead of mobilizing our energy to do, we just allow ourselves to go deeper into the peace. And there is a potency that becomes available And we allow that to be. And our mind gets quiet. We allow the thoughts to float by. And from that perspective, we can allow our lives to be ordinary. That becomes very desirable. And abundance has a whole different meaning. How may we serve further? Yes.
Wonderful discussion this morning. And it really aligns with what I'm going through at this moment. I'm been having problems with a gastric reflux for a long time, and I'm going in. I've seen a surgeon, and I'm going, and we've done some tests, and I'm going to see if I'm going to need surgery this coming week. So the whole talk of the diaphragm and the whole talk of is this going to go well for me, and really hits the spot, and dealing with pain, and I've had a lot of opportunity to just see my mind go crazy and also be able to see that and find and actually be in the moment. And I've also been looking at Stephen Levine's book on death and dying, and he has these wonderful meditations about releasing pain and tight areas like a fist. And so that's been a wonderful discovery for me. So it's just somehow this conversation is just riding along this conversation this morning for me. So very helpful, all of it, and great training for using this process of acceptance and softening and then also bringing the universe, the stars in there, as we are all part of the galaxy, and allowing it to the loosening and bringing it to such a broader focus in such a wonderful way. So anyway, for me, this conversation's really really had an alignment. So it's meant a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. It's really,
Yeah.
it's so valuable
Yeah.
to all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're all reaching an age and stage where this isn't true for everybody on the phone call, but health becomes Pandora's box. Physical health. Mm. Should we pull on that string and open the door, or just leave it closed? That's and then, do we walk through the door? How far do we go down the corridor before we turn and run? And there's always the question, is this intervention going to make my health better or worse? That's always, and there's no knowing before you make that choice. There's no knowing. But what we would say about any surgery is make sure you have a surgeon who, does it regularly, has done it 100 times, and you can read the confidence in their eyes. We never make predictions because we have great respect for free will. And the intuition of the moment. How may we serve further? How may we serve further? Hmm. You know, we love these meetings together because your questions really guide what we share with you. So the interactions are really important in terms of what will come forward. And in so many ways, what we have in common is so much greater as human beings. What we are facing is so much, in a way, the same, that these conversations help every single one of us. And we come through to make you aware of the qualities that are available to be cultivated that otherwise we might miss. And it's not that we are superior. We are formless. So we have a different perspective. And we are timeless. So we have a different perspective. And having form and time creates the illusion of limitation. Or we'll say the multiple illusions of limitation. But when you allow yourselves to be formless and timeless, those limitations fall away, and you can access fifth dimensional experience. We don't often call it fifth dimensional experience because that feels out of reach, because nobody knows what a dimension is anyway. So, and then if we say we're from the 12th dimension, then we're completely out of reach. And so we have left a lot of that conversation by the wayside, but we're bringing it back in a way that may be more understandable if we say that we're formless and timeless. So we don't experience the limitations of form and time. And as spiritual, formless beings, having an existence in form, it's easy to forget that you are at the same time formless and timeless. You are spiritual beings having a material experience, not material beings seeking a spiritual experience, which is how we all think we start. But there is that formless, limitless potential that is the source and the identity, for want of a better word, for all of us. And so taking time to really get that in an experiential way, taking yourself even for a moment into the formless space between the breaths. Gives us access to a different level of truth about who and what we are. So I guess, unless there's a question, we'll move into meditation. Thank you so much for coming today. We're completely delighted to be with you. Till we meet again, so much love to you. Bye for now.